Good morning. It's an honor to be here today with the Republican Jewish Coalition. Let me begin with gratitude for each of you. For nearly 40 years, you've served as a bridge between the Jewish community and America's political leaders. You've stood sentry against attempts to undermine the Jewish people at home and abroad. Your work, it's made a difference, and it matters now more than ever. So on behalf of all Americans who believe in freedom and liberty, I want to say thank you for giving your time and your talents to this important cause. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you for all you do. The heinous attacks by Hamas on October 7th, as well as the repulsive responses of support for terrorism by some here at home on the American left, are stark reminders that your mission is needed now more than ever. The images from the terrorist attacks show the world their true face, pure evil. A despicable, unprovoked attack on innocent families and young people celebrating a joy-filled Jewish holiday. Make no mistake, the terrorist attacks on October 7th were not only an attack on Israel, they were an attack on America. In Joe Biden's remarks at the White House following the attacks, he did not even mention Iran. Let's be clear. Hamas is a proxy of Iran. Hezbollah is a proxy of Iran. And in business terms, you'd all understand, Joe Biden, thinks that if we go after the subsidiary, it's okay to leave the parent company alone, the one that's providing all the funding. But with that thinking, and under Joe Biden, we're now in a proxy war with Russia. We're in a proxy war with Iran, and we're in a Cold War with China. We need to put an end to Joe Biden's Iran appeasement by locking down all the money he's made available to Iran and fully enforce our Iran oil sanctions. Sadly, we shouldn't be surprised that Iran would greenlight a massacre after getting billions of dollars from the Biden administration. Biden has turned maximum pressure into maximum concessions. He's literally was begging Iran, the world's leading sponsor of state terrorism, to re-enter the failed Obama-Biden-Iran nuclear deal that almost guarantees Iran pathways to nuclear weapons. Joe Biden naively believes that these financial bribes would somehow stop Iran from wanting to cross the nuclear threshold. He's just wrong. When I am your president, we'll reinstate rule number 1, don't negotiate with terrorists. I have spent over 3 decades, starting as a young software entrepreneur, traveling around the world, building global companies, and understanding the rights and freedoms that people either had or didn't have. I've had people working for me in over 100 countries. I've had people that worked for me that didn't have the right to vote or the right to free speech. Joe Biden's recent $6 billion hostage deal just put a $1 billion price tag on every American student, every American tourist, and every American business leader traveling or living abroad. When Biden's hostage deal was announced, I said immediately, we'll see a dramatic rise in kidnappings, and here we are today. We also know that there's even more billions that are being funneled to Biden for Iran's use. It was like on page 18, but $10 billion was freed up and unfrozen this past June that went to Iran. But most disturbingly, Biden is not enforcing the oil export sanctions on Iran, which is allowing them to dramatically increase their oil exports, much of it to China. And I'm talking dramatically, like more than millions of barrels of oil a day. It's helping Beijing fill its strategic oil reserves with Iranian oil and letting Iran generate tens of billions of dollars to further its terror agenda. And what was going on at home? Joe Biden was draining our strategic petroleum reserve. Policy choices have consequences, and we now see the very painful consequences of appeasing Iran and appeasing those that sponsor terrorism. But apparently Joe Biden hasn't learned. Even now, Biden is desperate to hold on to the fantasy of a nuclear deal with Iran by calling tacitly for Israel to back off on response to Hamas. The goal should be restoring deterrence, not constraining Israel. But sadly, it's not even clear at this moment if Biden actually agrees with the policy objective of eliminating Hamas. He wants to send $100 million to Gaza. He keeps doubling down on bad policy and is using our tax dollars to effectively fund both sides of the war. But the problem isn't just Joe Biden. To the university officials, the talking heads and the far-left politicians on television that try to draw some kind of moral equivalency between Israel and Hamas, your words are abhorrent. And and your behavior is entirely hypocritical, because these same so-called defenders of free speech have been happily silencing conservative voices on their campuses and their cable networks for years. When I'm your president, we'll work with Israel to destroy Iran's terrorist infrastructure, not just in the Middle East, but around the globe. No Hamas or Hezbollah agent anywhere in the world should be able to find safe harbor. And let me go further. Countries like Qatar cannot be allowed to support terrorists. Joe Biden needs to get a lot tougher with Doha to win the unconditional release of all our hostages. And if Qatar hasn't completely severed ties with Hamas by the time I take office, designating Qatar as a state sponsor of terrorism will be one of the several pressure options on the table. You can't be friends with the United States and Hamas at the same time. And let me say one more thing. With American citizens massacred and more taken hostage, Hamas leaders in Doha should be considered legitimate military targets. We all know that our allies need to step up and do their part too. I call on the United Kingdom and the European Union to designate the Iranian Republic Guard, the IRGC, as a terrorist organization. This will enable law enforcement across the world to disrupt financing, propaganda, and organizing of Iran's terror network. This must happen. And also, I call on those members of the UN Security Council that are our allies, the UK, Germany, and France, do the right thing, trigger the snapback of all UN sanctions on Iran immediately. Why hasn't that happened? Well, we've been focusing on the atrocities abroad and the hurt to innocent families. The UN missile embargo on Iran expired. Yes, expired during the time between the October 7 attacks and today. Biden let it happen, I'm positive, to preserve his secret nuclear deal that he still keeps hoping for with Iran. We also need to provide Israel with maximum political and military support over the weeks and months ahead. We know that as Hamas and Hezbollah use human shields, we must stand up and tell the world it's Iran with blood on its hands, not the Jewish state fighting for its right to exist. We have a White House that's been obsessed with tearing down the democratically elected Prime Minister of Israel and building up the terror-sponsoring regime in Iran. But let there be no doubt, Joe Biden's decision to put distance between Washington and Jerusalem put Israel's security in danger and empowered the global boycott, divestment, sanctions campaign targeting the world's only Jewish state. I was proud to sign in my state our anti-BDS bill into law this past spring. The BDS campaign is inherently anti-Semitic, and I will continue to fight it as president. Jerusalem is the eternal, undivided capital of the Jewish people. We will put an end to Biden's attempts to undermine Israel's sovereignty over Jerusalem. The same goes for the Golan Heights, where Biden refuses to acknowledge Israel's sovereignty to this day. I will ask Congress, when I am your president, to send me a law codifying that recognition in order to stop any future president from putting Israel's security at risk via executive action. We'll stop bypassing the Taylor Force Act, and we'll put an end to the Palestinian pay to slay. And we'll stop funding organizations like UNRWA from the UN that they're promoting anti-Semitism. They fund terrorists, and they keep Palestinians trapped in decades-long protracted refugee status. While our hearts remain in the Holy Land, our eyes can't avoid the mounting problems facing us here at home. Our southern border is being invaded, a literal invasion, with illegal border crossings at record levels. Record levels just passed this September again. I've been down at the border more times than Joe Biden. That wasn't hard. And more than Harris also. But we've had North Dakota troops down there nearly continuously during my time in office. Brave young men and women in the North Dakota National Guard, not just standing sentry on the border, but also North Dakota troops providing leadership and pilots flying night helicopter missions from San Diego to the Gulf Coast in Lakota helicopters, attempting to stop transnational criminal organizations that in many cases are better funded and better armed than our law enforcement, because Joe Biden is effectively defunding the Border Patrol law enforcement the way many have defunded the police in our cities, and we see what's happening in our cities. But border security is national security, and our national security is compromised every day that we do not have control of our own borders. The likelihood that Hamas agents have entered America has increased dramatically over the last 2.5 years. We throw out numbers that are hard to imagine. 6.5 million people that have entered our country since Joe Biden took office. But think about that. That's every man, woman, and child in the state of Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Rhode Island, Joe Biden's home state of Delaware, and you have to throw in Montana as well. Every individual, that equals 6.5 million people. That's how many have entered. And when you're down at the Border Patrol getting a briefing as a governor, one of the things they show you is the other number on the list, and that's the known gotaways, where we've got cameras on the border but no Border Patrol because they're busy literally doing paperwork. They're overwhelmed by the volume of people they're processing in. The known gotaways is 1.5 million. But there's another number that none of you hear about, the unknown gotaways. This is a place where the bad guys have disabled the cameras and people just walk freely into our country. Is that 1 million, 2 million? We don't know. But we do know of the ones that we've caught that we got a record number that are on the terrorist watch list. I do know from my recent trip down there that these weren't all from Latin America. There was over 100 countries where people had come across and had been apprehended, including all the names of the countries we've mentioned so far in this list, and including Syria, Iran, North Korea. Policies that encourage open borders or overwhelm our defunded Border Patrol put the American people in danger. As your president, border security will be a top national security priority. I am prepared to surge troops to the southern border and employ whatever we need across diplomatic, informational, military, and economic responses. But the U.S. military, we can deploy them in responsible and effective ways to stop the flow of people and drugs into our country. We will reverse every one of Joe Biden's open border policies. We'll boost recruitment and retention efforts for our Border Patrol. We'll prioritize policy making on the advice of our Border Patrol professionals, not left-wing ideologues. And why do I say that? Because if you're down there meeting with multi-generation American law enforcement families that have worked in the Border Patrol, they will tell you, we've closed the border before, we can close it again, just give us the resources, the technology, and the leadership from the White House to close it, and we will close it. We'll also issue National Security Directive 1, ordering a maximum pressure campaign on the international cartels and their Chinese suppliers, directing every department and agency of the U.S. government to immediately bring forward every possible tool, law enforcement, executive action, financial sanctions, rewards for justice, special operations, covert actions, and more, to shut down the flow of fentanyl into the United States and make sure it's the narco-terrorists that are being threatened, not American families. We've lost the equivalent of 5 Vietnam's worth of mass casualties of Americans dying of overdose deaths since Joe Biden took office. It's 300 a day. 300 Americans a day. These are sons and daughters, their nieces and nephews, their moms and dads, trapped in the disease of addiction. 70% of those overdose deaths are fentanyl poisonings. And this is something that is dear to so many of you. I'm sure in this room there are people that know a family that's lost someone to a fentanyl overdose death. It's dear to our family. We're so fortunate in our state that we've got the most courageous First Lady in America. Catherine has been sharing her face and voice and sharing her decades-long battle with the disease of addiction and now her over 20 years of recovery. She's here with me today. We're going to be at dinner tonight. But, Catherine. We're taking mass casualties, and now we've got over 15 million children in America living in a home where someone is suffering from the disease of addiction. We can fix this working together, and this is something that affects Republicans, Democrats, independents, people of all faiths. This is something certainly we should unite to protect our nation against. And all the while, the one thing that could really help us support our allies and battle terrorism around the world is a strong economy. And the one thing that will help us fight inflation and grow our economy more than anything is American-made energy, and it's under constant assault. The U.S. energy industry is under constant assault from the false promises of the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is driving inflation up. It's empowering and enriching our enemies like China, Russia, and Iran, and it's hurting, not helping the environment. Joe Biden has replaced American exceptionalism with American self-doubt. He's replaced deterrence with deference. And he's replaced peace through strength with generating conflict through weakness. Without a fundamental change in direction and strategy, we were headed towards a century dominated by the Chinese Communist Party and an axis of anti-American regimes, including Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And I can tell you as a governor of a state right now that those 4 nations I just listed are attacking us every day with cyber attacks. And not little ones. They're attacking our nuclear infrastructure. They're attacking our infrastructure and our electrical grid. They're attacking our schools, our tribes, and our cities. We have to be just much more aware of the silent attacks that are occurring every day. Wouldn't hurt to actually have someone for the first time ever in the White House who spent 3 decades in technology and would actually understand how we need to battle back. The list of challenges we face today from the CCP is long and growing. Many in Washington continue inventing new phrases to avoid acknowledging the reality we face. They use words like strategic competition, and they throw them around to avoid making hard decisions. But that has consequences. We're in a Cold War. But if you think that we're just dealing with someone strategically, then you end up with export controls and sanctions and investment restrictions that get watered down by loopholes so large you could drive a quad-track tractor through it. It's why we put off making investments in our own military. We accept delays in arms sales to our allies. When we do that, we signal to our enemies it's better attack now because, our Harpoon missiles aren't going to get to Taiwan until 2028. When spy balloons are flying across our skies and a Chinese military base is set up in Cuba, it's time to call it what it is, which we've been calling, and since today we announced our campaign, which is it's a Cold War. We're in a Cold War with China. And this is a Cold War that we can win. It's a Cold War we must win, and we must win it before it becomes an actual war. The modernization of China's military power, its coercive and broad and expansive diplomatic strategy around the world, its co-option of UN agencies like the World Health Organization, its cyber and economic war against the United States and our allies all make it clear that the CCP is looking far beyond the Taiwanese Strait. China is on pace to overmatch the U.S. military in the next few years, with the cost of interest on our national debt is on pace to overmatch our defense budget. Joe Biden, under Joe, we are losing economic and military superiority, and that will produce unacceptable and far-reaching consequences for future generations of Americans. First and foremost, we need to get our fiscal house in order to unleash the unmatchable engine of American economy. And there's a simple way to do this. The Biden administration thinks they can create a regulation to solve every problem, and instead they create problems. I know from 3 decades in an industry where we were creating jobs, increasing competitiveness, improving productivity for nearly every company in America, we move our economy forward by focusing on innovation, not regulation. An economy that's growing not only delivers prosperity for the American people, but it allows our allies to be more safe and prosperous because we can increase what we spend on military spending. We have to expand our economy and wipe out inflation. Every American family is being crushed right now. The average family is spending over $700 more a month than they were when Joe Biden was elected just to put food on the table and gas in their car. We need to unleash the power and potential of American-made energy, making America the energy superpower of the world. With innovation, America can be the arsenal of energy for the free world. On day one of a Burgum administration, we'll be selling energy to our friends and allies instead of forcing them to buy it from our enemies. Right now, we're headed in exactly the wrong direction, playing into Beijing's hand and Iran's. Joe Biden today is at war with American-made energy, while he supports Russian, Iranian, and Venezuelan energy. Russia's ability to hold Europe hostage to its energy supplies has made the world less safe. Biden's empowering of the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, Iran, to send more and more oil to China undermines our national security and Israel's. Putin would have never invaded Ukraine if Europe wasn't so reliant on Russian energy. And now with flawed sanctions, China's had a free pass to use Russia as its discount gas station, while Biden's electric vehicle scam has pushed Americans to become even more dependent on China. We need to stop enabling Putin and empowering China. America can and will be, under a Burgum administration, the dominant energy superpower of the world. We must also wake up to China's strategy of co-opting traditional U.S. allies and U.S.-funded organizations, and we must reverse the policies that enable it. Saudi Arabia is a great example. A traditional American security partner scorned by the White House for 2 years, it's been driven straight into the arms of Xi Jinping, opening up a major beachhead for China in the Middle East. And the Biden administration's investment of taxpayer money in UN agencies exploited by China is another example. China uses the UN Human Rights Council to whitewash their genocide and their brutality at home. China's influence over the World Health Organization lets Beijing cover up the origins of pandemics and threatens the world with future pandemics. And China uses the UN Food and Agriculture Organization to mitigate a massive strategic vulnerability. And all the while, Taiwan gets locked out of every single international meeting. As America is the UN's largest donor and American taxpayers deserve a say, we shouldn't be writing blank checks to the UN. Assistance should come with strict conditions to ensure taxpayer money is advancing American interests, not China or Iran. As we look abroad, the daily threats we face from Russia, Iran, and North Korea cannot be cast aside as problems we'd rather not confront. These threats must be deterred and rolled back wherever possible. Putin is a murderous thug running a massive mafia state with a navy and with a modernized nuclear force. He will never be satisfied with just taking Ukraine. In his own mind, he's the czar of the Russian Empire, and left unchecked, Ronald Reagan's Cold War victory could be quickly undone. Putin and Xi are tied at the hip. They're both trying to draw Iran closer and expand their influence in the Middle East. And their goals align: bring down the United States, bring down Israel, threaten democracy. Today we face an onslaught of attacks on the premise of American exceptionalism. We see it everywhere, even indoctrinating the next generation of youth and military leaders across America. Ronald Reagan spoke of a shining city on a hill, and hundreds of millions yearn for American way of life. America need not be perfect for it to be exceptional. Our Constitution provides the foundation for the never-ending work of achieving their historic and aspirational vision presented by our founding fathers. To defeat our adversaries, we must have a leader who understands the power of free societies and free markets. I remember visiting East Berlin, going through Checkpoint Charlie before the wall fell. I remember working with our first partner in Poland just after they became free. I've seen how freedom and liberty transforms lives of people around the world. It's a reminder of the power of a president who lifts up America at home and abroad. And in times of these great uncertainty, I want to close with Genesis chapter 12. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Thank you for hosting me. God bless you all. God bless the United States of America.